Hey guys, my name is Shubham Kejriwal. Welcome back to the channel. Today in this video, I will be talking to you guys about the GRE General Test. It's basically for graduate admissions in the US and basically the North American region in general. And I have recently given this test and I would like to share some of my experience with you guys. Give you some tips about how exactly I prepared. And in case you're wondering why you should be listening from me, let me give you a brief about my examination results. So I was targeting for a 320 plus score in the GRE and I scored 321 out of the 340 marks. So the division is such that I got 154 out of 170 on the verbal section and 167 out of 170 on the quantitative section, which is basically mathematics. So as I said, I was targeting 320 plus and I got a score of 321 and I'm satisfied with the division as well. And more importantly, the fact that I was able to achieve this within a span of about 3 weeks of preparation is actually more satisfactory to me. And I will be giving you tips about exactly that, how you can prepare for the GRE really efficiently and be able to actually score good marks in a very short amount of time. So without any further ado, let's go ahead, take a look at the GRE exam in general and then discuss some of my tips and how exactly I prepared for the examination. So the GRE general test is often given in the following format. First of all, you have a writing section with 2 prompts of half an hour each. One would be an essay in which you are given a prompt and you have to basically write down what your opinion about that prompt is, take a particular side and write down about 500-600 words or something and describe the particular situation. Another prompt would be about scrutinizing a particular given problem. They'll tell you about a particular situation and you'll have to scrutinize basically how exactly, what are the parameters on the basis of which this situation can be analyzed, and you do not have to really give any of your opinion in this second prompt. Anyways, after both of these prompts, which accounts for about 1 hour of your test, you are led to the quantitative and verbal sections. You'll have 5 sections in total. 2 of quantitative, 2 of verbal, and 1 would be unannounced. 1 can be either quantitative or verbal. In my experience, I got the verbal section, so I got 3 verbal and 2 quantitative, but you can get 3 quantitative and 2 verbals as well. The reason behind this is that only 2 of quantitative and 2 of verbal are marked in the GRE. However, there is always one section which is extra and which is not marked. It's just used for review purposes and it doesn't really count at all. But the trick part is you really don't know which of these 5 sections would actually be the review section, and so you have to give the answers to all of them as if all of those answers would be marked off. So now talking about the marking scheme of the examination, the GRE basically contains 340 marks in total. The maximum you can score is 340. And the division is such that you have 170 marks for the verbal section and 170 marks for the quantitative section, including both of their subsections. And the writing part, if you're wondering, is marked separately on a 6.0 scale. So you'll have 340 marks of the quantitative plus verbal, plus 6 marks maximum on the writing part. Okay, that was a brief introduction about what the GRE is all about. You get an overview of the sections, you get an overview of what to expect in the test. And now let me talk about particular resources that I used in order to tackle this examination. One of the most important resources I used was a Magoosh account for actually preparing for the GRE. These accounts are not free. I think if you buy a first-hand account, it's about $2,500. But there's a workaround. You can go in the description down below and check out a Facebook page from where you can get access to Magoosh accounts at a very cheap price, second-hand accounts obviously, but you can always just clear out the memory and use it as a free account, and they're available at as cheap as around 500 or 600 rupees. So make use of these resources. I think there should be other resources available as well for many other websites just like Magoosh. By the way, basically Magoosh is a website from where you can have a lot of different questions, practice questions section wise, practice some material, take a look at some material and analyze your mistakes and all, review your mistakes, and overall keep improving over your period of preparation time. I'm not sponsored by Magoosh, which is kind of sad, but and on that note, I'd like to mention that there are many others as well. Kaplan is there, there's Manhattan, and there are other very good resources which you can make use of. and actually prepare for the GRE. Just like these online platforms for preparing for the GRE, you also have many other platforms, and even these platforms offering free trial tests which are full length. And I think this is a really good way in case you are very tight on budget for preparation for the GRE, as I definitely was. This is a really good way of actually analyzing what you can do without really spending a whole lot of money. If I remember correctly, I gave the practice tests for Kaplan and for Manhattan. So 2 practice tests absolutely free of cost were arranged just like this. 2 I took from the Magoosh platform after I got access to a paid account. So four were these, and 2 more ETS provides, the organization of the GRE examination. They provide 2 free of cost examination when you register for the GRE. And so you have a total of 6 examinations, or even more actually if you are ready to pay more, already at your hand. So I think that's really important. Have at least 6 to 7 full length examinations available for yourself that you can solve over the period of 2-3 weeks, and review them and actually work on them. I'll talk about that in a bit. Except for these resources, I think many other people also use some books. They use many other online resources. Me personally, I didn't feel the need to do that, and I was good enough with just these practice tests and that one Magoosh platform for my preparation. In case you want to explore more, I am sure that there are a lot of resources available online from where you can get access to these books for some amount of money. But again, honestly, in my opinion, it's more of a gimmicky trend that people try to buy into, and I don't really feel a need to actually spend all of that money into these different resources. Okay, so that was about the resources, but now let's come to the actual preparation part of the GRE examination. And right off the bat, I'm going to tell you something that I did, which might sound a little bit crazy, but it will make sense. Let me just explain it to you. So first of all, you have to go and register for the test with about a 1 or 2 month gap in between. At least a 2-month gap, in my opinion. At least that's what I did. And let me tell you why that is important. So I have seen many people who actually go ahead and start studying for the test, and once they feel prepared, once they think they'll feel prepared, they go ahead and register for the examination. But that generally doesn't turn out to be the case. Because of this no deadline phenomena that you have set up for yourself, you don't really have the motivation to study for the test at all. And thus I recommend that go ahead and first register for the GRE before doing absolutely anything else. I had absolutely no idea what the GRE was, and I just went ahead, spent those $210 or $215, whatever they ask for, and actually registered for the test for a date about 2 months from the date of registration. And I was sure that now I'll have to start preparing for the GRE examination. That's highly recommended from my side, and I think if you have a deadline to work towards, you'll be more efficient about it and you'll not take it too lightly, which people tend to do all the time. So the second step that I followed was I went ahead and I took a full-length examination for the GRE without absolutely any preparation at all. Right off the bat, after I signed up for the GRE, I went to the Magoosh app and took one full-length test. Now that's important for 2 reasons. So these online platforms generally do not mark the writing section. They generally just play around the verbal and the quantitative section. And so let's talk about that only. I remember the first test that I took, I think I scored a decent 166 or 167 out of 170 on the quantitative section right off the bat. But on the verbal section, I knew I needed a lot of work. I think I scored around 145 or 147 or something like that. And I knew that I had to work on verbal for many different reasons, which I will be talking about in the next section. But this is exactly why it's important to take the GRE without preparing firsthand, so that you know what exactly are the places where you need to work and which are some things that you can actually skip. So now I knew I had to heavily work on my verbal section, and I can ignore the quantitative section for a while and just go ahead and revise a few times right before the examination. Another thing that I realized was the fact that sitting for 4 hours in one sitting is not an easy task. So you have to take care about the exhaustion, you have to take care about what sections you need to work upon, and after the test is over, you also have to take a review of the test and know what exactly were the places where you lagged the most. And then after this first timed full length test, what I did is I didn't take any more full length tests, rather I focused on taking sectioned timed test. So just the verbal section, which is of half an hour, I took that half an hour verbal section only test on the Magoosh app. So try taking these section wise tests in order to improve those section timing, and not focus on the full length test after that, at least for a while, until you are sure that you have actually gotten some amount of improvement in that particular section and can move on to the next step. So let me go ahead and actually tell you about some problems that I faced while actually giving the section test and the full length test that I gave in the beginning. In terms of the quantitative section, I was pretty chill about it. I knew that I had good hold on mathematics. It's on the pre-calculus level and it's really easy if you have actually gone through a CBSE type of board. Although I will mention the fact that there were some questions from, say, geometry or some questions about remainders or something like that, which I was absolutely not sure of. Maybe because of the fact that they were taught at such an early stage that I absolutely didn't remember them, or it was simply that these were topics simply not covered in the board. So I identified some of these topics. I went to Google and I just typed in randomly just GRE remainder type questions, and it just showed me a bunch of videos. I went through those videos and the topics are very easy, but at the same time you should at least know what these topics are in order to of course perform them in the test. And now let's talk about the actual problem, the GRE verbal section. I think I'm not alone when I will be saying this, that the verbal section requires some amount of vocabulary, which at least from the CBSE standpoint is quite advanced in my opinion. So the GRE verbal section is comprised of 3 types of questions. One would be reading comprehension, in which you'll have paragraphs, and per GRE full length test, you'll have at least and actually at most one full length essay type paragraph, about 600 words or something like that, and you can have multiple shorter paragraphs, 300 words or less than that. Second is text completion, which is simply fill in the blanks. So you will have a sentence, you will have a blank, and you'll have to choose from 3 or 4 options that are given in a box. And the third and the most heinous section of these all is the sentence equivalence, and that's where it actually tests your vocabulary. So in sentence equivalence, you basically have a sentence or two in which you have 1 or 2 blanks, and for each of these blanks, what you have to do is you have to find 2 words which would convey the same meaning when put in this sentence. Let me repeat that. You basically have to find 2 synonyms which when put in this blank would convey the same meaning for the word. And the problem is that the options that are given, out of which you have to select exactly 2 words, those words sometimes just don't make sense to you because you don't have that a good grasp on the vocabulary that GRE uses. So you're not able to guess one word, and even if you're lucky enough to find one word, now you have to search for another word, which is even more difficult because you already guessed this one slightly nicely fitting word that seems to be working, but now what if you select another word which absolutely doesn't work? And that just makes the entire job even more difficult. So sentence equivalence is really a very important part of the GRE test. Some of the most hardest questions which carry the most highest weightage on the GRE come from the sentence equivalence type questions, and the only way of actually working around the sentence equivalence type questions is building up a really strong vocabulary. And building up a strong vocabulary doesn't really mean just going around into word banks and looking up some really complex or sophisticated words, because GRE doesn't have some long words or something like that. They have a very particular range of words, in my experience, at least in this 3 or 4 week experience. Even if that word is a little bit too hard, you'll by the end of it have an intuition that okay, this word is slightly more difficult than the GRE level and this might not actually be the answer, so you can maybe ignore it. And that actually has worked for me in the past. Coming back to sentence equivalence, there are some applications free of cost on Google which you can make use to actually improve your vocabulary, particularly aimed at GRE level. Some of these applications are available from Magoosh. If you just search for Magoosh vocabulary builder or something like that, you'll have 2-3 top apps from Magoosh only. And there are many other applications of obviously which you can make use of actually improving your GRE. But make sure that you stick at the GRE level only. Do not go around looking for just random word banks on the internet in order to improve your vocabulary. That is not going to help. Finally, let me give you some personal tips on what to take care about when doing the GRE and what to actually work upon, and something that has actually worked for me in this 3 weeks of preparation. Firstly, something very important to note about the GRE is the fact that there is dynamic marking in the system. So what that means is that based upon your performance in the first section, let's say of the verbal section, it would automatically determine what level of questions it would be giving in the next verbal section. So for example, in the first verbal section, which is a mix of easy and medium questions, you score about 13 or above out of the 20 questions in the section. Then in the next section, when they give the next 20 questions, they would tend to be a little bit more difficult, so medium or hard. And that is a good thing, trust me. You do not want to score bad in the first section with about 5 or 6 correct answers, and then in the next section when you have like absolutely easy questions, you score, I don't know, 15 out of 20 correct. You do not want to do that, because easy questions contain less weightage, and so you'll get less marks per correctly answered questions compared to a harder question. So in my opinion, it's very, very, very important to score at least have the intuition that you have scored above 13 out of 20 correct questions in the first verbal section, for example, and only then you can expect a score above 155 or something. So in physics, more emphasis of course given to the quantitative section compared to a verbal section. Even if you're scoring around 150 or 150 plus on the verbal section, it's more important that you score 165 above on the quantitative section, and you might have a good chance of getting into some of your top priority universities. One really important point that I missed to mention before is that the GRE also does not allow you to take your scientific calculators or graphing calculators inside the examination hall. All you have access to is an on-screen calculator, which is absolutely basic. You cannot even calculate cube roots of numbers on that calculator, only square roots. So it's recommended at least that you learn what is the cube root, for example, of numbers between 100 to 1000, in my opinion. And once you have that level of preparation, I think you should be good enough for appearing in the GRE examination. The final strategy that I would like to mention is the test taking strategy that you have to take while doing this mock full length test. So as I mentioned in the beginning, I had access to 6 mock tests, and I gave only one in the very beginning. So I had about 4 or 5 tests available even after this 2 weeks or so of preparation, of scrutinizing my answers, reviewing everything, improving my verbal section and everything. Even after all of that, I had about 4 or 5 full length tests available with me. And now in the span of about 3 or 4 days, I tried to solve all of them right before the GRE. Well, it's honestly on me because I took the GRE in the middle of my semester, so I wasn't really able to focus a lot on it. And so I had to cram in almost all of my preparation in the last few days of my preparation period right before the examination. But anyways, I took 4 examinations, I think, in a span of about 3 days. On the first day, which was I think a Friday, I took 2 tests. I took 1 test on Saturday and 1 test on Sunday. So 4 tests on a span of just 3 days. And what this helps you do is it helps you really build up the stamina to take up the GRE test finally. As I said, even in the beginning, it's a 4-hour test. Even when you give CBSE board exams or something, they have a length of 3 hours. So sitting for 4 hours is really exhaustive in my opinion. And you should really prepare well to actually sit for that long of a period. Or otherwise, this exhaustion in itself can lead to a really big deprivation in your score that you score in the GRE finally. Anyways guys, this obviously was by no means a full-length description of your preparation of the GRE. You can find many other such resources online which can tell you a lot about how to prepare in the GRE, step by step, section by section, and even talk about the writing section which I haven't just covered in this video. In the end, I would re-emphasize on the fact that I was able to do this. I was able to score 321 out of 340 in a span of about 3 weeks, and even in these 3 weeks, most of my preparation was really crammed up towards that last week. and scoring above 320 in the GRE even in a very small span is actually possible. With that said, if you have any queries about the GRE general test, I would be really happy to take them in the comment section down below. Do let me know about them. I'm also going to be taking the GRE physics subject test in the September-October period, and the IELTS English proficiency test really soon. So I will be making videos about them probably sometime. Hopefully, I mean, but yeah, I think the GRE general test is something that everyone should be taking when they're applying for graduate studies, especially in the USA. As you know, I'm a physics student really interested in academia and research, and in case you relate with this journey, I would highly recommend you guys to subscribe to this channel. With that said, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you gained something from this, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.